So as an investor, I realized that good business is profitable business. And so it all ties up. It's not, non-commercially minded. It's actually, yes, be the good guys, go, kind of hang beyond business, be the good guys. And in the end of the day, you will win in the short term and the long term. And I think if we get a few more percentage of organizations and people doing that, that'll have a huge impact on society and to everyone's well-being.
Welcoming none other than Christopher Brooks to our interview series. But before that, let's just begin with a quick introduction of what Engati is. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform available across 14 channels, with 30,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 300,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Christopher Brooks is the Managing Director of Clientship CX, an international advisory firm dedicated to resolving customer-related challenges. He's a customer strategist with over 20 years of agency, client-side, and consultancy experience working with corporates across Europe and America. He is formerly head of Untitled CX and now leads Clientship dedicated to a beyond business philosophy. He is also the founder of the Customer Experience World Games 2020, a not-for-profit enterprise that helps CX professionals on their journey to delivering sublime experiences to customers, employees, and communities as a whole in response to this crisis. Welcome to the show, Christopher. Such an honor to have you on board today.
Hey, it's a delight to be here. I was very honoured to be invited myself. It's a great series you've got going here, some excellent content. So thank you for inviting me.
Really appreciate that. So let's just dive into the conversation. I think I hope you're ready for this.
Go for it.
All right. So the first question to you, Christopher, is, how has COVID-19 changed the way companies approach customer experience as a whole?
Yes, I was very fortunate to be given access to some academic research into customers. Professor Dr. Phil Klaus at the International University of Monaco shared with me some tracking studies that have been run with consumers since the beginning of March. And it showed principally that consumers were changing their expectations of what they wanted from customer experience. To it, there was an emotional dimension. There was an employment dimension, kind of massive impact on our state of mind, and then also our expectations of what we should get. And if what's happened is that we have lowered our expectations in many areas. Our goals and our ambitions have become shorter in terms of more easier to manage, more accessible. We're not dreaming out a second or a third home or planning a huge wedding. We're not looking to complete our bucket list. The traveling to Phuket and lying on the beach has been replaced by sitting around the table and doing a puzzle with a family. So we've had many appreciations of those in society who are making a contribution, and therefore we as consumers are less needy, less expectant. Now, what we have seen, we tracked 200 companies during lockdown. And what we have seen is they kind of drop into one of a number of bits. Now, some organizations are almost bulletproof. They've not been impacted. They have, of course, they have all been impacted. Their employees will have suffered, their organization investments would have suffered. But on the outside, for us consumers, we'll look at a telco company, perhaps, or we'll look at a supermarket, and they look relatively untouched. Sort of we're still using them in ways that we were before. The product, the service is still expected. Some of those organizations have chosen to almost be blinkered and say, we'll just carry on as we were before. Some organizations have had to radically change how they look for revenue. Their sources of revenue have dried up. Now, there's two ways of that. The intra and inward focus, which is very much a case of we're not getting the revenues. Whatever it takes, let's get new revenues. And you've seen airline companies who have switched from being passenger aircraft companies to become cargo aircraft companies, taking packages and putting them on seats where the customer once was. Now that's almost signifying to us as consumers, you're just cargo. If we can't get the human cargo on, we'll get parcels and packages on. As long as we pay for those seats, that's us. So they've pivoted, but actually not really in consideration of customers. Now, maybe that's in consideration of their employees, and hopefully they'll be bringing their customers on the journey to say, look, this isn't what we want. Actually, this will get us through, and when restrictions are lifted, we're back there for you. Still buoyant, we're still solvent, and we can serve you. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just kind of wash their hands of one customer set and move on to the customer set. So they're an interesting group. The third group have been ones who've been relatively untouched, but have been conscious that unless they show a care for society, it's going to reflect really badly on them. And some of those have perhaps made superficial light touch approaches. So they may have said, well, we're doing really well at the moment, so let's give a donation to the health service. Or we're doing pretty well at the moment, let's close down this factory line and make some PPE for our employees or for other people. And you think to yourself, what's the motive behind that? Now, with some of those organizations, the motive's absolutely pure. They actually recognize that they have a responsibility to play. And it really does come down to them as an organization. Have they seen customer experience, as it's written up in the offices, where it says we put customers at the heart of the business? If they look at that, think customer means transaction, they're more inclined to actually be self-centered and become company-centric. Because what they're talking about is, we'll improve it, will get more revenues for our bottom line, we'll be more successful. However, if they've looked at that placard and seen customer at the heart of the business means we put our customers' world at the heart of the business. Now, whatever's happening to our customers, we need to help them. There's some brilliant examples of that. So one you would possibly not expect, Louis Vuitton. So Louis Vuitton, very much focused on making people feel better about themselves. Now, in times of boom, that mean trinkets, that mean the way you look, that mean garments, etc. But actually, in times of crisis, that's about health and safety, making you feel more confident and better about yourselves. So they did switch off all of their perfumery lines and instead produce antibacterial solutions, and they gave it away free to the public hospitals in Paris, because it was the right thing to do. But it was in their DNA to think like that in the first place. And this is what we as consumers have been really interested to see, are the organizations who are authentically delivering an improved experience to help society through this, and their customers, employees in that, and those where you think there's a reason they're doing that they're worried if they don't do that, it will impact their future business opportunities. A good example is there's a UK supermarket, but there's also a Spanish energy company that they looked at their supply chain and they went to their suppliers. We normally pay you in 30, 60 days. We normally have short-term contracts. You have employees who will be worried at this stage. So we are going to pay you in 48 hours now because you need the cash. We've got it. You need the cash. And we're going to extend your contracts out to 2022. So you don't have to worry. So that's what I mean about moving away from the transactions and thinking about customer experience for the communities, because they're actually thinking. Now, you could argue, well, if they do that, guarantees those suppliers will look after that organization. So it all has a kind of come around. But it was the Adel and Trameter report that showed that actually a third of customers will consider organizations that are demonstrating compassion, and 2/3 of customers will look very unfavorably on organizations that didn't look after their employees during this period. And there's a reason for this, because if you think real, we consume all the time. Pre-COVID, we're out engaging, we're going to coffee shops, we're going on trips, we're driving cars, we're getting all these regular transactions were our way of understanding and experiencing how that organization interacted with us. That stopped. We haven't been able to go into those retail outlets. We haven't been able to get on those planes. So how are we assessing an organization we're related with? through the media, through the way they're behaving towards society. So that's spiked. And it comes through in this study in terms of emotional engagement, how that organization is looking after other audiences become more important than how it's looking after its customers and transactions. So I think that's probably the biggest change that we've seen. And that's not a spike. That's a forever thing now. Organizations who think about customer experience from their own transactional point of view will struggle. Those that think about it from a gain for society is a gain for us, they'll be the ones that will prosper.
That's actually very wonderfully put, Christopher, because right now everybody understands that empathy is something that is very important with respect to business also and customers. And as you said, the customer is smart enough, right? There's no kidding. People come to know when you are actually faking it or when you actually mean something that you mean. So great point over there.
Yeah.
Right. So moving on to the second question, Christopher, is how can brands attract and retain committed and content customers during this customer service crisis that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and it's not one that fits in with the normal business model, because obviously when you're looking at things like retention strategies or acquisition, what you're looking to capture is a transaction. You're looking to get a contract. You're looking to get some business. You've almost got to suspend that, and you've got to kind of win over their hearts, and you've got to win over their commitment to your organization, and recognize now, as much as I might want to go on holiday to a far off destination, it's not going to happen now. So if in your business model you're looking at me and trying to attract me, and then the outcome is not me booking a flight, then you go, well, that didn't work. But those conditions have changed. So you've got to think about, well, how can we attract the type of customer we're looking for, but recognize that what we're doing is, and I heard this expression the other day, which I really liked, which was ROR, which is return on relationship. You've got to think about how and you've got to be able to measure, are you more likely to commit to me? And try and find some behaviors suggest that. There's, I think it's Thai Airlines did a great thing called Air Miles at Home. And actually what they did, you signed up for the Air Miles program and you connected it to your GPS. And every day that you went less than 5 kilometers from your home, you earned miles. The more days you did that, the greater you accumulated the miles. Now, that's a bit of fun, but actually what it's showing to me is that organization sacrifices the very thing that it's there to do, because it recognizes that our societal safety and our health is more important. Now, when it comes to kind of opening up to business as unusual in the future, they're on my radar as an organization. I would be more inclined to consider. So I think you need to put in place these indicators that give you very strong confidence that customers will change their behavior, but peg it to a transaction today, and it's kind of a challenge. I mean, I know that some organizations are looking to do that. So if you take like the entertainment world, if you could just give a token amount now to show that you'd like to come next year, it can buy you some preference. We will give you access to the priority seats first, not a cheaper version of it, but you'll get access to it because you've made that commitment. So there are kind of ways for you to get a physical transaction to demonstrate future commitment, but I think you need to think more R on R.
Yes, ROR is a big thing right now because I mean, people have been trying to fake this for a long time. People have been talking about, businesses have been talking about, oh, we are invested in our customers. Oh, we are trying to be the better person. But I think it was kind of faded because of the normal world. But now there is no escaping it. And it is actually helping, like you mentioned about the airline company that did it. They were smart enough to actually combine their relationship with customers with something like gamification and kind of provide a really nice and overall brand view to the customers. I think that was very smart on their end, that they mentioned about it.
Yeah, I like that. I've seen smaller activities such as magazine subscriptions where they'll give you account share on the basis that you renew next year. So, whilst there's no certainty to me doing that. And this gives me some indication, if I'm sitting there as the chief financial officer, that there are some revenues potentially to come in the future.
Right, right. All right. So moving on, Christopher, how can technology inspire a customer culture shift within the organization in this time?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest winners of COVID will be technology. But really interestingly, and I think this is where you guys score really well on this, it's not about just delivering it for the sake of delivering it. What I want to see as a customer is I don't think about technology like, you and I would think about technology. It's an enabler for me to do the things I wanted to do. And a really good example is did a capability for me to do my shop as I go along through my phone, taking pictures of barcodes, and at the end, I wouldn't need to interact with anyone at all. There you go, it's fine and it's through. Now, the way it was presented, it's not new technology, I mean, many supermarkets have this, but the way it was presented, it came across with compassion and as innovation. So a large majority of people who previously would have ignored it when it was presented as more convenient have actually engaged with it. So I think technology is now the opportunity to take a step back and think, were we fighting, on the wrong basis before? Were we trying to get this through because it reduces friction, it makes it easier? Whereas actually, if we present it with a much more human connection, this is actually going to work for consumers. We've seen, I did a podcast with a wonderful Dr. Marina Shapira, and she showed the change in consumers' approach to online shopping was incredible. The browsing had gone, and I know what I want, I'm going for it. Now, the reason being that the range of things I was looking for went down. It was more the essentials. But she said that this approach, this confidence we have in ourselves to go for the right thing has changed. So I think, signposting, navigating, being a place that customers can go to get more of the information and insights going to become more important. And we've seen the older generation readily adopting technology and saying that they're going to stay with this. They're worried about their health, so therefore technology has become a solution for the problem. I myself run a scouting pack of 8 to 10-year-olds, sort of 36 scouts, and we can't get together, but every one of those 8 to 10-year-olds has fully embraced running Zoom meetings and breakout rooms and me sending them an app to kind of do activities on. Absolutely no problem at all. And they've had no impact on their contribution, their commitment. So I think technology has really accelerated through this period. I think the challenge for technology is that we're all fully adoptive of it now. So therefore, to stand out, to make a difference, to be distinctive as a technology brand is really challenging. And I think, as I say, I think that's where you guys have the flair. And I think it is the age for the creative technologist. That's what's ahead of us. The routine, the fundamental, great, you'll help us. But it's the creative technologists that we need now.
That's perfectly said. So I remember, and I always give this example in all of my interviews, is that one of our guests was saying that 6 months ago, my granddad had no clue of using a video chat conference, something like that. And now he's very comfortable with it. I think it was Gokul Alex, a brilliant interview. You guys should check it out if you haven't. But he says that, even my father had no idea about using a video call and pretty skeptical about it. You know how old people are. But now he's very comfortable and he actually finds it very handy to kind of see his grandchildren. And I think the entire environment is compelling the world towards technology,
Absolutely.
Which is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
There was just to pick up on that point about a granddad, I saw a lovely piece. I think it was from Intel, and it was their team. One of their elderly relatives just couldn't get over this barrier. So, she was, had Zoom in front of her and didn't know what to do with it. So the guys went away and they created a device that had a red button and a green button. And underneath it, it connected to all the macros. And they put it on top of her keyboard. She hits the green button. Zoom comes on with her family. She hits the red button. off it goes. And that's what I mean about the creative technologists. So, I think they're going to have to work really hard to actually reach some of those audiences that have now said, I'm interested, and, differentiated technology solutions for different audiences will become, we're very much of the age, aren't we, where kind of, you just build the best UX, the best solution, and it fits for everyone. But I think going forward, that is going to become differentiated for different audience types. That's what's exciting about technology. It's always got a new challenge to take on.
That's correct. I think the two major challenges with technology was A, to first of all change the mindset of people to be more acceptable. But
Yep.
B, after being acceptable, being able to access it like everybody.
Yeah.
That was the two challenges. And I think we are working towards the second one, and probably like within a year or two, we will be there.
I think a lot of people say that, COVID has done more for our digital transformation program than the team did. But, sometimes you need that sort of catalyst. And if it has accelerated technology to become a much more intrinsic part of our experience, well, I've got no issue with that.
Yeah. So something along the same lines, Christopher, talking about innovative or more non-conventional technologies, do you think conversational automation or AI chatbots or something like that will provide scalability, flexibility, and reduce the chances of human errors?
Absolutely. I think there's always going to be those brands for which it doesn't feel right. I think that has to be kind of accepted. If you've got a brand that's built on the basis of a depth of human interaction, where it's not necessarily how smart the AI is, but actually the idea that a computer is representing an individual doesn't quite work, then but they're going to be a smaller group. However, if you are able to provide me in an efficient and an authentic and an informed way the information that I'm looking for, and it feels credible and it gets me to the answer quicker, then I think there's an increasing audience that are comfortable with that. Now, there's an age dynamic to that, but I don't think that, and I think I'm in the, what am I, X generation? The sort of, just after the baby boomers. I think we're probably the last of the skeptics. I really do. I think we'll be kind of the last of the next generation. So the, Generation Y, they're much more adoptive of it. So I think it will accelerate. And I think it also will be essential. We are becoming much more demanding of organizations. Social media has given us this access that was never there before. And, occasionally organizations will bite and they'll respond, but they can't respond as humans. They just don't physically have the capacity to do it. And it's not affordable to have all those humans there. So if you can work towards sort of, an 80-20 where the majority of those are managed in an automated way, then I think that's absolutely fine. And I think the idea of it being a conversation is absolutely essential. Absolutely. I think we are conversationalists. Imagine me on the end of a call. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and give you one-word answers. I'm going to give you a story. So therefore, I want a storyteller at the other end. But imagine that if you program the AI to be a storyteller, if it actually said, well, sorry, sir, let me just tell you about another customer who had a similar situation. I'm in, I'm in there. I'm really listening. So, and I think it will become better at the tonality, picking up the clues of the sentiment, the language that's used to be able to immediately change from an efficient answer to a conversation, which is what service agents are trained to do.
Right.
So yes, I can see it. I can see it going. When it doesn't go well, I think it knocks everyone back. When there are bad examples, we all suffer. But I think they're getting better and better and better.
Yes, I think that's important. The biggest problem of what we at Engati face about customers complaining about other chatbot platforms is it feels very machine. It feels like a Terminator robot trying to hit you with words. Oh, I don't understand this. Or maybe, dumb user, invalid request. So it has to be. So we at Engati believe that the more humanized it is, the better the customer, and the more comfortable the customer is, the more open he is to have the conversation with the chatbot also. And that is why technology like live chat, wherein we know that certain parts of things cannot be automated no matter what you do, right? Certain things have to be taken care of a human being, and maybe have a functionality wherein you can connect the customer to a human agent, something like a live chat that can help out during situations like that. So I think, yeah, innovation in that case will help out.
It's no different to human conversation. If I pick up the phone and I talk to someone and I know I've got a complicated issue, probably one of the first things I'll say to the agent is, do you understand this topic? Because if you don't, can you please put me through to someone else? I think the shortfall AI has is it won't explain to you at the start that it might run out of code. It will assume, so therefore you assume it will have the answer. And the reality is it never had the answer. It could take it so far. I think if we can figure out how to manage customers' expectations, and would be, I'd be fine if it said, 76% of the time, I will have to for you. I'd go, well, this is a pretty standard thing, so you'll have the answer. If I know it's hugely complex and I could then click through to actually live chat, then that's absolutely great. And I think this goes back to my point about the impact of COVID. My expectation is elderly people, people with high risk COVID groups, they should go before me every single time. So if they're dealing with live agents or they're queuing for the supermarket, I'll try the AI. I understand, and that's how I think things have changed significantly. Whereas beforehand, we'd have been all rushing to the front of the queue. A big chunk of society, every society in every country has said, no, there are groups now that I realize always must come ahead of me. And I think it's the same with AI. If I got a simple thing, I'll do the AI and then I'll kind of get out. But if I come to you with a hugely complex piece that I know you've not dealt with before, then I'd like you to kind of at the start to say, we raise our hands, we probably can't answer this. Would you like an agent? So, and that's human nature. It's just AI needs to just have that little bit of AI woven through it, I think.
That's perfectly said. But Chris, even today, a lot of these customers are very skeptical, like you mentioned, to have a conversation with something like a conversational agent or like an AI chatbot. So, according to you, how should businesses encourage customers to opt for more self-service options like chatbots?
Well, I think the challenge you quite often find is that it will be the first area of the business that goes automated. And it actually needs to be presented as this is how we do business. So take someone like Barclays, they're a UK and an American bank. They had 4 or 5 attempts at kind of really connecting with customers in terms of demonstrating they really understood digital. Once they got to that particular point, then it's much easier for me to expect it to be an AI-based relationship. But if actually the very first day, the very first thing you do on your digital journey is to switch AI on, this is new to me. So you need to condition me into it. I mean, they did a fabulous suite of Eagle Labs, they were called, around the country, where you couldn't buy anything in there, but you'd go in and they'd all this sort of great technology. And there's a lovely story about one of the engineers in there who built a prosthetic hand for a little girl using a 3D printer. And what that conveyed was a detailed understanding of digital capability. So now if I pick up the phone and deal with Barclays and it's AI, why wouldn't I trust that? Because they've demonstrated in other areas their strength in that particular discipline. So I think it's joining up what you're doing in other areas of the organization. It's presenting it as part of how you do business and the betterment to customers of having that delivered. And that's not always, we save you time, we save you money. It's actually about, perhaps to your point about human error, is you get the right answer every single time. They've got to figure out that's got to be conducive with who they are as an organization. If it's woven into the DNA of their organization that they are a human-to-human interactive type organization. We are people. So a good example, I'd be really interested in how these guys do it. So Ritz-Carlton, they present, we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. So you can imagine that is not something you could then go to IT and say, let's just automate everything. Yeah, make it. Or if you're going to, you've got to really think about how you're going to do that. Disney, make them smile. So then all of a sudden it becomes a visual thing that you need to kind of think about, or the tone of the voice. But, it's not to say it can't be done. But brand, I feel, people are missing at the table when it comes to actually making that an authentic connection for the customers. If brand were on the team, you'd probably find a lot more AI would be adopted.
That's true. Yeah, I think so. What you're trying to tell me, Chris, is that it's about how you establish yourself as a forward-thinking company, and having that AI culture around, and then maybe customers will be expecting that kind of experience from you as a brand all in all. Is that?
Yeah. And that forward thinking may not just be in technology, it may be in terms of your diversity, your inclusion, your environmental credentials. All of these things demonstrate you're a forward looking organization. So digital is going to be part of that mix. If you're none of those things, and then you're just bolting on digital, I think as consumers, we probably look and go, that doesn't fit. There's another reason you're doing this, and good news, we've closed down all of our branches because now we have some super AI agents. We don't even need contact center staff either. Then all of a sudden you're kind of going, is that the sort of organization I want to be with? Whereas actually, if you're able to say, those agents are now focusing on the complex matters, or they're making even bigger improvements for customers, then all of a sudden you realize, wow, that's to my advantage. So yeah, so I think it's very much about the positioning, and it's probably not enough time spent on that, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Wow. This has been wonderful, Christopher. So many insights. I mean, it was a great conversation. Any last idea or thought or anything you want to, tell our audience today?
No, I think I just liked, I listened to a webinar the other day talking about social value. It's a local government level where calculating social value showed that you get 5 times your return when you include a broader set of considerations. So I think the thing I'd like to leave any customer experience professional or practitioner with at the moment is, when you think about making an improvement, reconsider who is around the table that you've got to fulfill. Whereas historically we may have said, is the customer happier? Yes. So the business is happier? Yes. And employees, are you pleased with what you're delivering? Yes. That's not enough anymore. Around that table, you've got to make sure your partners, your suppliers, communities you serve, society as a whole, even your competition. If your competition says, you've made us raise our game, that's a brilliant thing you've done, we're all going to benefit from it, then you've made a customer experience that's valuable. That's what the new age of customer experience is about. So whether it's an AI conversational chatbot, or whether it's actually how you're going to train staff or a well-being policy, whatever it is, there's a broader set of stakeholders now that you've got to fulfill. And I think unless you're considering all of them, then someone is going to be looking and saying, I've lost out. And I don't think in society we should ever have anyone who loses out.
That's very wonderfully put, and that was a great message to end the conversation. I think, that's very important for you to kind of think beyond your own brand or your own gains, and kind of try to pave the way for the entire the entire ecosystem to kind of take the lead with you. I think that's true customer experience.
It's beyond business, and what's really interesting, Rahul, is the ESG funds in the investment class, which is environmental good, social gain, and good governance. These are organizations that do the right things in the right way for the right reasons, and they get the right outcomes. As a group, we're starting to see that the value of those organizations is greater than those who aren't in the class. So as an investor, I realize that good business is profitable business. And so it all ties up. It's not, non-commercially minded. It's actually, yes, be the good guys, go, kind of hang beyond business, be the good guys. And in the end of the day, you will win in the short term and the long term. And I think if we get a few more percentage of organizations and people doing that, that'll have a huge impact on society and to everyone's well-being. So yeah, that's my final message, I think.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for your time. Your insights were amazing, and our audience is really going to enjoy this.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I enjoy the series, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
The pleasure is ours.